Welcome back to the shed. I'm Syd, Macky's on the camera, and today we will be replacing the bearings in a DT Swiss 180 hub. So these are my cross-country wheels this year. They are Noble TR35s with bird spokes and DT Swiss 180 hubs. They are super duper light. I think the whole wheel set, obviously before the cassette and the rotor, comes in at 1330 grams. So super lightweight, but still wide and a really good feel to them. So what we're gonna be doing today is upgrading the bearings. I think bearings are generally kind of an underrated upgrade. They're something that people both forget to maintain and forget to look at as an opportunity to upgrade their bike. So we have ceramic XD-15 bearings from Enduro Bearings for these hubs. And the cool thing about these bearings, they are a hybrid ceramic and steel bearing. So the balls are ceramic. He's got balls of ceramic. Said no one ever. Anyway. So we've got our ceramic balls and a steel race. The steel race is made out of a nitrogen infused aerospace grade steel. It will never rust or corrode, and in the event that some grit does get through these seals, that grit will actually polish the race and make it smoother than before. Unlike many bearings, they actually get better over time, and in the event that they don't for some reason, they have a lifetime warranty. I'm gonna be riding these wheels really hard, doing several cross-country stage races this year, some of which will be in some muddy, gritty conditions, so having bearings that I know I can rely on is going to be amazing. For this task, you will need bearing press, obviously your replacement bearings, a variety of bearing install and removal widgets, and a star ratchet removal tool for the DT Swiss hub, and the replacement hub seal. We also need a cassette removal tool. Where are you?
And you'll need a chain whip.
This is not my favorite task, the whole cassette removal thing.
I do them really low. I hold it really like low on the cassette. Yeah, because then it's much easier to hold it with one hand.
Oh yeah, that is way better. I don't know why I always try to do it as wide as possible. This was put on by a rhinoceros. Oh, fudge. This honestly, like, after all this time of doing these videos, I've gotten really good at bike maintenance, but I still have a really hard time getting things loose and telling right from left. Oh God, come on. What is, okay, usually it's not this hard. Okay, that wasn't just me, that was on really hard. Off we come, go over here and behave yourself.
So the first step now that you've removed the cassette is to remove this end cap. What I would recommend is grab the soft jaws for the vise. So now clamp the end cap into the vise.
Okay.
And then just pull straight up on the wheel.
Ooh, ooh, that was fun. Didn't even feel like I was breaking anything, so that's lovely.
No rhinoceros that time. So same thing on the other end cap.
Oh, fun, okay. Yeah, I like this part. It's a good day, any day you get to use the vise. Now it looks like we take that bearing out and put this one in, but how?
Yes, there are actually going to be 4 bearings that you are replacing. Sure. 5 even? There's quite a few. So there are a couple ways to remove bearings. We are going to use the bearing press with like removal adapters. Okay. One can also use a rubber mallet with bearing, removal, what are they called? Widgets. They're like metal things that are the right shape for a bearing, and you put it on the bearing and then you hit that and that pushes the bearing out. I just wanted to mention that this is not the only way to remove bearings, just as there are multiple ways to install bearings, but we're gonna do the way that feels the least dramatic, violent. First, go ahead and flip this wheel over. Okay. You're just gonna pull that hub off, and it just pulls straight up, and it probably will not require much force.
Famous last words. Okay, oh no, but I actually didn't.
So if it's not coming off, it means it's not totally straight. So just pull straight up and wiggle a little bit and it should.
Okay. Wow, look at that. There's grass in there. Or is that something that's supposed to be in there?
No, it could be your hair.
No way, are you kidding?
I don't know. Nah, it's probably grass.
This is a tumbleweed. I think I rode through a tumbleweed garden.
So the bottom, that silver thing pulls off. That's the upper part of the ratchet. And so I would recommend laying these out in order.
So this?
So there's the ratchet with a spring inside it. That red thing comes out.
We forgot to include the pokey tool, but hopefully you all know by now that you need a pokey tool. So this, okay. No, it's more like do.
And then that red thing also comes off. It is the same top and bottom, so it doesn't matter which way it goes. That's useful to note. Now what you're doing is you're pushing this out. One way to do it would be to use a rubber mallet. We are going to do a more controlled version, and you are going to use that to press on this side. And this is where the bearing stuff, in my opinion, gets tricky is maybe not the right word, but like it requires thinking through. So right now, look at this side. You see how it can wiggle around?
Yes, we need to.
So let's put something that fits exactly into there.
This. No. We're using this one because that leaves space for the axle to move out. And then on this side, we have this little guy, which goes in like that and keeps this from going side to side. I feel like the way this is currently is going to push the thing the wrong way. Is that correct?
So it's going to push the axle from your left hand to your right hand. So now you just screw them together and you just want to try to keep this one centered as much as possible.
It's good at this point. Ooh, that was a terrible noise. Oh, well that's easy.
There we go.
That's all we need to do.
Yeah, so it popped the bearing.
Sweet. Oh, that was cool. Okay, a little setup required, but then very cool.
I think that's how I feel about bearings in general, is like having the right tools and thinking it through at the beginning. Then you do it and you're like, oh, this is really easy and makes sense. Yeah. But up to that point, it's hard.
It's hard to visualize.
So now you push the axle through, and I think it should come through,
Ooh, wee. I'm amazed, and I'm concerned that we're never going to get this back together.
Okay. So keep pulling, it should come all the way out.
I didn't know I wanted to bring it all the way out. Okay, so this one we don't want.
Well, so that one you want to set aside because we need to measure it.
Okay.
So now your goal is to get the opposite bearing out. Although the first thing you have to do is remove that star ratchet. And that's what the star ratchet removal tool is for.
In you go. Look at you.
And so this is hard. And so what I would do is go ahead and throw the axle back in. Just slide it through the other direction. Because that gives you something to keep it centered. And then you're going to use the vise. You can just let it drop once it's close, drop all the way down. There we go. And then lock it down tight. Good.
And then we set this on there.
And then push the axle in so that, there we go. So now you're just going to unscrew the wheel. Yep. So push down and unscrew at the same time. So you don't have to, you don't have to have a hand in the center. You can have it on both sides, but you just want to keep tension on it. It's going to be hard.
All right, tension.
Tension.
This is why we train people.
That's right.
The vise moved.
Okay, let's lock the vise down into place.
Yeah, I'm gonna need help. Bring around the Rosie. Okay, the vise is moving.
Release it, straighten it, and then we need to tighten both sides.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Yeah. Apparently they tighten themselves as you ride. And so that's why they're really, really tight, which, is good because you want them to loosen themselves. So now I think you can just lift straight up. And then there is your star ratchet. And there's a bearing inside that we are going to remove.
Wow, this is quite the endeavor.
You'll need another press. So you can use the short one. See the little shorty guy? Yeah.
Okay, so we need somebody to just sit like that.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Ah.
Yeah, so it sits on the outside.
Like that. And that goes like that.
So you see how that creates the space for it?
Yeah, it doesn't sit very well, but I think once you screw it on.
Well, then you need something on the other side to actually push the bearing through. You see the edge of the bearing.
Yeah, so it needs to go right
so it
to
has
that
to go
edge.
To that edge, and it has to go inside of the other part. So you need something small.
Is that right?
I think that's I think that's the one.
Spin. It's so easy to turn. Like for some reason, I thought bearing presses would be like what we just did there, but instead it's just like, wee, there you go. It's no banging, whacking, pushing, shoving.
Excellent, no bearing. And then the other side, no bearing there. Cool, so your bearings are out of the wheel. The one thing we've forgotten to do is remove the seal, the hub seal. There's a spot underneath it, like there's a gap under one part of it that you can stick a screwdriver under, a flathead screwdriver.
I'm just afraid to put too much force.
Well, this is a replacement piece, or a piece that gets replaced.
Okay, so you don't care.
So it doesn't matter if you bend it. So this is kind of tricky because here's the problem. There's a spacer in between those two bearings.
Yeah, which is going to prevent them from going either way.
Yeah, so what you can do is push the spacer over to one side. There's a lip of the bearing there, and then use this
like that.
on the edge to try to knock it out. That would be one way. The other way is using a bearing puller.
Yeah, we haven't used this yet, so I think we should use the bearing puller as opposed to the old whack-a-mole method.
So this bearing puller is for what size?
15 to 16.
So measure that on the mat here.
Oh yeah, the mat. We haven't even talked about the mat. So it's either 15 or 24, depending on which number we're looking at.
So 24 is the external, 15 is the internal. This, what you care about, is the internal. You just need to unscrew it enough that it fits in, and then you screw it out so that it catches the lip right below the spacer.
Do I still have the spacer moved over? Put
no,
the spacer
the spacer centered, yeah.
This expands based on how tight it is.
Exactly, so as you get lower, it expands more and more, so you want it...
So wait, oh, it gets narrower as I go out.
Yeah, so you unscrew it, put it in there, and then screw it in so that it catches.
Oh, yes, that's what you do. Okay, so now I screw in.
Yeah, but look at it from the other side, and you want to make sure that lip is like right at the bottom of the spacer, so that it's at the top of the bearing.
Good.
Perfect. So you want to screw that in so that it like locks it into place, and then you grab that bearing hammer, which is behind the rubber mallet, unscrew the mallet part of it. I'm a little bit jealous because I haven't actually gotten to do this yet.
Okay, oh, and that goes in there.
Yeah, well, before you do that, inside that black thing up there, this thing slides onto that.
Wow, okay, this is involved, man.
So onto the hammer, yep, like that.
Okay, then. Okay,
And then that screws on
starting
there.
to see where we're going with this, and I'm excited. Even though the setup is lengthy.
You're using this tool to pull the bearing down and out. So you want to hold this and then slide that up and then go wham to pull it out. Yep.
Woo! That didn't work.
Must not have been connected all the way on the lip, or this got loose somehow.
Let's try again.
I think it must have come unscrewed.
Okay.
You want that like as tight as you can get those two pieces together. Okay, now try.
Voila, we did it.
So now you could do it with the, or you could do it with a rubber mallet. Let's just do that because then we get to do all of the tools. So up there on the shelf on the far right side, one of those should be a 15 mil.
This?
And then you see how it fits, but that's not the direction you want it to go, right?
Good call. Good catch. Okay, well that was a lot easier than what we just did with the puller.
But do you see why it would have been hard to do that?
We couldn't do it with a, yeah.
Well, what you'd have to do is push the spacer to the side and use a smaller one and like try to hook it on the side of the lip and then hit it out.
All right, now we get to put bearings in. At this point, if you didn't already have your bearings, obviously we already have the bearings, you would want to measure what you took out, which you can do one of several ways. We happen to have this very handy dandy mat. You can tell very easily, for example, that those are 15 millimeter. Could also use the calipers.
So there are 3 measurements that you care about. There's the outer diameter, do the outer diameter.
23.85.
So basically 24. Yep. For the inner, you'd want to use these ones.
Cool, I didn't even see that. 14.9, so that confirms 15.
And then the other thing that you care about, because you care about inner diameter, outer diameter, and width.
We have here on the mat.
That is a 1524-5.
Once you have the bearing measurements for all your bearings, head over to Enduro Bearings website to order your new bearings. In this case, we're looking for hub bearings, so we'll go to that section and filter for bearings with an inner diameter of 15 millimeters, outer diameter of 24 millimeters, and width of 5 millimeters. Since these hubs don't tighten down like cup and cone style hubs, we are looking for radial bearings. This leaves us 8 options that vary in price depending on the bearing material and technologies. Personally, I'm going for the XD-15 bearings because of all the reasons we talked about earlier.
Unlike many bearings, they actually get better over time, will never rust or corrode, and they have a lifetime warranty.
Then repeat this process for the remaining bearings you removed.
So now you have to decide which bearing you want to put in first. Do you want to put the ones in the hub first? Do you want to put the ones in the wheel first?
Let's do this one.
Make sure that it fits on the inside of the bearing.
Yep.
Okay. So then how are you going to press that bearing into that hub?
Can we do all of them at once?
Generally better to do one just because they're less likely to get sideways.
Like that. And then we need somebody for the other side. Is that okay?
Yeah, that should work. So basically now you're just squeezing that bearing into place.
Does it need the spacer to have been in there?
No, so the spacer can go in from the other side before you put the other one on.
And then it's tight.
Seem tight? All right.
Spacey.
Spacer goes in.
And we're just gonna kind of reverse what we just did with the other side. Double check.
Spacer's in there.
Yeah. This is easier than getting it out, I think. Spacer seems very loose, but I guess that's okay.
Might be worth popping it in there and just squeezing both of them again.
Just didn't want to squeeze too much, you know?
That's good, yep. Well, you can use the 15 that is on that one.
Okay.
And then you just need to have something to push against on the other side.
Which is hard because this is all jiggity jag.
It could be something on the outer, like that sits on the outer part.
I mean, that kind of does.
Oh yeah,
doesn't
that's
it?
yeah,
Actually,
that's
right.
That should work.
This is like really challenging my spatial awareness, and I don't love it. Yeah, and like when you get it right, it isn't hard at all, which is nice. It just in it goes. I think I like putting back together more than taking apart, which is actually unusual. Usually I prefer to take apart. I feel like there was like another component.
So you had the axle in.
Oh yeah. Do we care about that now?
I would, because that helps keep things centered.
There was something.
And then just make sure the axle's all the way through so that it actually, there we go. And then just clockwise it and then snug it.
Okay.
Great.
It's not as tight as it was before, but that's okay.
So you can leave the axle in.
Okay, and then we'll do the seal.
Now we do the seal
axle.
because we have the axle to help center it.
Right, we put a little grease on the outside of the seal. Goes in like that.
So you see why the seal driver has the big hole in the middle, is so that it fits over the axle. So these, the seal driver, the seal, this tool, and a variety of the other ones are all part of the DT Swiss hub kit that Enduro Bearings makes. See how this hole is big on this side? So this is not necessarily going to be centered.
Oh,
So just pop something on top of it that has a small hole.
Just all this for one tiny seal. It's kind of cool to watch it just pop in.
So what is next?
Well, there's one bearing that I suspiciously haven't used yet.
Where are you missing a bearing?
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that just go in there on its own?
So look at the tools that you have at your disposal. You're looking for something that has space for an axle to go through it. I think that right there, the other one. No, right towards me, toward that one. I think you want a full over the axle one that like clears the axle completely. So it has a hole all the way through. That, yeah.
It's tighter than the other ones. Should I keep going?
Yeah, that's probably gonna be one of the ones that is fairly tight.
There you go. Let's see how we did. Oh, looks good to me. Now we put this back together. We definitely remember how that goes. This one first.
Well, my recommendation would be to do it on the hub side.
That's a good starting point. Okay, that's in like that. This goes in here like this.
Yes, and that's why that needs to go the way it did, is like the red thing is because then the spring fits around the outside of that lip.
And then it attaches somehow. And a hope and a prayer.
And then the end cap plus the wheel being on it and a through axle is what holds it all together.
Boom. So easy. And voila. And now all that is left is to put your cassette and your rotor back on, and you have new wheel bearings. I would say overall that was like very simple and not, I think, as scary as people make bearings out to be. I would say the hardest part was just finding the right widgets. And I definitely think having the bearing press makes a difference if you were to do this more than, say, once. I would just say, like, this is a doable task for a DIY mechanic, but take your time to prepare. Don't just like start pulling things apart. Make sure you have the right tools, make sure you have the right bearings, and it will all go very smoothly. If you don't do those things, you'll be sad. This is how to replace the bearings in a DT Swiss 180 hub in 1 minute.
Start by removing the cassette and brake rotor end caps, freehub body, and spacer. Press the axle and non-drive side bearing out, then slide the axle back into place and use a star ratchet removal tool and a vise to remove the star ratchet. This may be a two-person job. Now remove the bearing from the star ratchet and pry out the freehub seal using a flathead screwdriver. Remove the bearings from the freehub body and using calipers or a handy bearing mat, measure your bearings. You need to know the inner diameter, outer diameter, and width. Now head to the hub bearing section of EnduroBearings.com and use the filter to find the correct size bearings for your wheel. We recommend the XD-15 bearing for their excellent performance and lifetime warranty. Install the bearings into the freehub body, making sure not to forget the spacer. Install the bearing in the star ratchet and use the vise and star ratchet tool to reinstall the star ratchet. Don't forget to use the axle as a guide. Press the freehub seal into place, then the non-drive side bearing. Install the freehub body, the end caps, cassette, and rotor, and you're ready to ride.